The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
It's New Year. New Year, New You. I can't tell you how many times in the last week I've seen variations on that because it is that time of year, right? Which is fine, but the fact that people are still trying to come up with new ways, like the rebrand, there was the 80s version, the 90s version, and the early 2000s version. It's like, no, we get it. You want me to buy a subscription to something because the plan is I will become a better person. Stop it. Stop repackaging this.
And not to get wildly, overly philosophical within the first 2 minutes of our New Year podcast, right? But to your point, right, it's the New Year, New You has been an ad campaign since there were ad campaigns, right? So the fact, and so ostensibly then it works to some degree, right? New Year, New You, right? So the fact that we collectively as a species have so much self-loathing that ad campaign can go almost unchanged for 50 years to be New Year, you, because you hate yourself, right? There are pieces of you that you hate, you piece of go out there and fix it. That's kind of a bummer, right?
It's not great. I know other countries are also not magical, perfect utopias.
Yeah.
But I do hope that some of the worst things about America, other countries are just we don't even have a term for that because we don't do that. That's yes, people want to improve themselves and the new year is a demarcation we all agree on, but there isn't an industry around it.
Yeah, somebody says self-loathing. Am I saying that right? Because I've heard the word loathing, but self-loathing?
There are things I loathe. I hate, I got this coffee table with, I forget how wide the legs are. I stub my toe on it all the time, and I loathe the legs on that coffee table. I don't hate myself or my toe, though.
Would be nice, but we spent the entire year living our best lives and playing video games.
So many video games.
So many great video games. So many not great video games.
Yeah.
Gotta take the bitter with the sweet.
Yeah, there's something about spoonfuls of, I think it's a spoonful of salt helps the medicine go down. Is
Acid.
that it? Acid.
Yeah. It does once.
Yeah. Does it help?
Arguably, it would make it diffuse into your system faster because of the vast amount of extra surface area you would have.
All these new pores.
Yeah. Look at that. Look how quickly it gets into my bloodstream. Anyways.
Yeah. So once. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So because we had some, I believe a production assistant would call it changes to the format.
Yes.
Last year, we're going to do a slightly different version of the Nostalgia Goggles year in review.
Yep.
So,
hang on. I just want to check real fast with Mike. Mike, it is called a change in format. Yep. Okay, good. Yeah.
That's gonna be super fun to edit. So what we're gonna do is we're still gonna do bottom three, top three, right? So bottom worst, middle worst, least worst, and then least best, middle best, best.
I think we normally do least worst, middle worst, worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You always the paramount thing is the last
that's category. Yeah. Every year I think you have to remind me of this. Thank God you're here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one time we're gonna be in our 70s and actually nail it, but
Yeah.
But if we nail it the first time, then I don't get to make my delicious hot dog reference.
Right. Yeah.
So.
That would be terrible.
Yeah.
But the big difference this year is we're going to include from all games that we played. So if we did an episode on it or not, if it was Nostalgia Goggles or not, just if it is a game I played, it could be on my list. If it's a game you played, it could be on your list. Generally, games that we played that didn't get dedicated reviews would be caught by Nostalgia Goggles. But there's a chance you played something and didn't mention it.
Yeah.
There's a chance I played something and didn't mention it, especially at this time of year, because when you're on holiday break, you might play something and then we haven't recorded an episode yet. So there may be some surprises in there. Who knows if they were paragons or absolute catastrophes. But that is the plan. So before we do that, we got to shill. Links in the show notes. Give us money, ratings and reviews. I feel unless this is the first episode of the first podcast you've ever listened to, you know what we want. Tell people we're great. Recommend the show to them.
Yep. And for $1,000, Lions and I will pull together a 1-hour variety show of us singing different show tunes.
Yes. It would cost $1,000 to make that happen.
We definitely wouldn't do it for free 2 days ago.
Nope. Yeah, I like that. You know what? It's the first one of these of the year. I think do the patrons deserve the full list? They deserve the full list. Should we do the full list?
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to thank all the people, but I'm going to leave off categories because we skipped them. And so now you're just all one mass for this episode. David, Jacob, Joshua, Keith, Martin, Yarno, Jay Brent, John, Kevin, Michael, you pay the bills.
Woo! We like you. We like the people who listen to and to recommend. We like it all.
Yeah, we like it all.
Yeah.
We love everybody.
Yeah.
These people just specifically also pay the bills.
Yeah,
it's not that we love them more or less.
We love everybody. These people just pay us to love them. Wait a minute.
Yeah, wait, no. See,
you can shuffle words around all day, Morty. Make anything sound bad.
We like everybody. These people just pay us. If the sentence had ended there,
right?
That still would have been sketchy. But nope. So we will start as we tend to do with the bottom three. So remind me already which one of these we're going to do first.
Okay, least worst, middle worst, worst.
Okay, least worst, middle worst, worst.
Isn't it build tension?
Yeah. So for me, my least worst game of 2023 was a game called Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap. So this is a incredibly high polish, really excellent HD remake of a game from, I think, the original Nintendo. I think the 8-bit era. It was a game I'd never heard of as a kid, and then it was released a few years ago. This like HD, super lovingly crafted remake, and I was like, man, it just people keep talking about this game like that. It was a good game, but it just didn't really take off in the West. In fact, it might not have even come to the West until later as part of like a compilation or something. And then these people hand drew all the art. So it's got that beautiful kind of like Cuphead sort of handcrafted old cartoon style, all fully orchestrated music. And I got it for free on like the Epic Game Store or something. And I was like, you know what? This would be a perfect game to play on my Steam Deck. So I got it onto the Steam Deck and I sat down and I played it for like 30 seconds. And I was like, I don't like the way this character controls. I don't like the way the combat works. I don't like any of this. This feels so terrible. And then my 7-year-old leaned over because I happened to be sitting on the couch. My 7-year-old leaned over my shoulder and went, "What are you playing?" And I just had this like crippling parenting anxiety where I was like, I can't rage quit this thing. I just sat down. What am I going to say? That I made a snap judgment and that's a behavior you should emulate. So I ended up playing it for, I think, probably like 20 minutes. And I can't, something about the way it handles just doesn't work for me. It's gorgeous. The UI has been like realized in a way that makes it feel a little bit more modern, and the music is beautiful, and it just feels great. And I just wish there was like a completely different physics engine behind it, because I just could not make my peace with how it handles. And you get like transformations or hats or some kind of crap that lets you like move differently later, but like until you do. And so I was like, I can't, like, I want to love this because I love everything. I love why this exists and that it was a labor of love and how much artistic talent went into it. But this is just not for me, apparently. So yep. So I did cross it off the list.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, you crossed off the list and you learned some stuff. And again, you know, this one's all about the feeling, right? You know, not about like whether or not the game was good or bad or whether you'd recommend it, but just like, how did you feel about it?
Yeah. And thank you for restating that, because that is the thing I forgot at the top is we try to be objective in our reviews. This is 100% subjective. This is the subjective episode.
Yes. So for me, my least worst, so I've got a thing I want to say, honorable mention, right? Which is that I'm putting this one in there because this is actually a whole category of games that I played that I was like, they're all kind of like this. There's Star Trek Online, where it's just, you know, just games that like, because the ones that I mentioned in my worst are ones that like, for whatever reason, like I thought would be interesting to talk about, or like I didn't like it for a specific reason. There were a whole host of games I played that were just basically incomplete, right? Like the physics engine didn't work worth a crap, you know, like the visuals were so janky and broken that it completely pulls you out of it, you know? So honorable mention for all of the games that I played that were incomplete this year. Star Trek Online being the most memorable of that because I had the highest hopes for it because I love Star Trek. To me, my least worst was Might and Magic Clash of Heroes, which I don't think I mentioned.
No, I don't remember us talking about that one.
The reason why is because I probably played it for about 30 minutes. And this one is also on me, right? This is my feelings, right? It's because this game is something that comes up when you Google Heroes of Might and Magic. because it is Might and Magic Clash of Heroes, right? It is emphatically not that game. It is so super duper not that game. And I was so.
Is it a coincidence or is it like a remake or a rebrand?
I think it is a rebrand of some type or something, but like, because it's just enough the same. Let me phrase that. It's mechanically the same in no way, right? And Heroes of Might and Magic, the thing I played Heroes of Might and Magic 2, maybe 4, I forget, forever ago, right? Played it on the computer. I loved it, man. You go around, you build an army, and then I always played it on easy mode, very similar to Civilization, where I just built up my army and then crushed everyone underneath my boot, and it felt fantastic. Loved it, right? And so I was like, you know what? I bet you they've made another one since then. And I like to play on my PlayStation, so I was like, oh, okay, hey, this is it, you know? And I did double check a couple of places. They were like, yes, should be Heroes of Might and Magic. It wasn't. It was like this weird, like, token-y deck builder thing, like very, very, very different. I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. And within like the first like 5 minutes, I was like, this is one of those things where the first order optimal strategy is terrible. So like, you've got to understand the game backwards and forwards before you can really drain any joy out of it. So it's for the type of player that like really, and I've seen a lot of players like this where it's just like, they are brilliant, right? And so they need a game that like really scratches that level of intellectual brilliance. I'm just not that smart, you know? So like, or at least not in that way, right? You know, so where it's just kind of like, if like for me, like chess is good enough, but for some people, they're like, yeah, chess is fine. But if you're not playing 4-dimensional chess, where you can actually go back in time and change your moves, and you have to account for the different timelines that you're playing on, I mean, like, what are we even doing here? And I'm like, okay. So I downloaded it, played it for about 30 minutes. And I was like, I can't do this. And so I put it as the least worst, because I think the game is probably fine, but I have a huge amount of disappointment paired with that game. And it was a real low point in the year for me.
I'm sorry. I'm glad you're going to bounce back.
I think I'll make it. Thoughts and prayers, everyone. Thoughts and prayers.
So sorry. This next one would be what?
A delicious holiday treat if you can get it. It is the middle worst.
The middle worst.
Yeah.
So
tasty.
Speaking of long running franchises and how not every entry is going to bring you joy, for me, my middle worst game that I put my hands on this year was Final Fantasy 15. Like,
okay.
I want so bad.
Oh, that was the one with the boy band.
It's the boy band. Yep.
Yeah. Not 16.
No.
Okay.
No, 16, which I also played this year, was fantastic.
Yeah, I remember you saying like that you played 14, which has consumed your life.
Yeah.
And then there was another one that you played that was really good, and one that you played that was really terrible.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's a long running franchise with a bunch of spin-off stuff. So like it's easy to confuse them, even if you are within the universe, right? And funnily enough, my wife, every time I mention it, she goes, "Is that the boy band one?" Because that is also her like main touch point for it, because that's everybody's main touch point for it. So there's a lot about that game that I think I could get into, but I just couldn't settle with the, like, maybe pacing is the right word, or the execution of the mechanics. But like the fact that you have to camp and you have to eat, and you don't have to, but like you get bonuses and stuff. It's very advantageous to do it. And just the way you get around and the way you interact with monsters and stuff, like it just.
Isn't there like a whole like 2-minute thing where all you do is push a car?
Yeah. Yep.
That's engaging gameplay right there.
It is. I mean, it is hold up to make this cutscene play, because they're talking to each other, right? You can hear the radio and they're talking to each other, like, and meaningful story is happening. But part of me is just like, I will watch a cutscene of them pushing the car. Why do I have to have my hand on the thumbstick? Like, if I put the controller down, I'll know where I put it, and then I'll pick it back up.
Just because the scenario is treacherous doesn't mean that it's actually treacherous. I just push up.
Yeah, it's literally exactly like that, but not even treacherous.
I press up to kill enemy insurgents? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to love it because it's Final Fantasy. Like, honestly, like we're talking feelings. Like, I want to love it because it's part of the illustrious lineage of things that I love. But as people will find out a few weeks after this recording, there's a whole other Final Fantasy I also hate. So we'll get there later this year. This one is the significant thing about this game that stood out to me was I knew I wasn't going to be able to get through this on my own, right? So I was like, I'm going to stream this because then at least I'll have chat, right? Our lovely community that comes and hangs out. And I was so like openly disappointed in like the experience. Not like when we played like Kid Icarus, because it's hard, right? A lot, like Ninja Gaiden is hard, right? And it's like, I'm angry and I'm throwing the controller and some of my feet. This was more just like, I must have looked sad. Like I thought for sure I was going to get a puppy for Christmas. And then instead I got one of those stupid little Sony robot dogs, right? And it's just like crestfallen. And chat was just like, you could stop, man. Like you don't have to play it. It's okay. Like, well, you don't have to finish it.
Right.
Like you wanted to have played all the numbered Final Fantasies and now you have. You won't have finished them all, but you did play it. You can stop. Just stop. And I literally uninstalled the game on stream.
Nice.
Like went into Steam and it was like, get out of here. So that's like, I feel bad for the people who worked on it and for people who love that game, that like, that's where it is in my life, but Middle-earth, easy.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah, no, and to your point, right, is especially when it's a part of a franchise that you really love, like, you know, it's hard to do that. Interestingly, my Middle-earth is also part of a franchise. Way less broad appeal or broad in quantity as Final Fantasy, but I think all franchises are for video games.
Yeah, I mean, other than like Mario.
Yeah, right. Like it's up there in the top 5 for sure. Rogue Legacy 2.
Oh yeah, I do remember how sad you were about this.
Yeah, I did not like that game, man. Like, but here's why: is that game was insidious in the sense that, like, one is because it's part of a franchise, right? And so I played Rogue Legacy, the Rogue Legacy, right? Played it, loved it, and then when you start off playing this thing, it's just like Rogue Legacy, but more, right? And the music is better, it's more polished, it's great, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's how it gets you, because it's not Rogue Legacy 1. It is a meat grinder. It is a Skinner box that they put you in, right? And then the worst is also, and so I'm glad that I played it for no other reason. It really caused me to pause and take stock of like, why don't I like this game? And especially when they had done some things to try to offset what I don't like about it. And I was like, and I don't like that either. You know, it's like, hey, you have to eat your spinach. And I was like, I don't want to eat spinach. And it's like, okay, well, you know what? I'll put some cheese on it. Well, normally that would work, but I still don't like this cheesy spinach. Why? You know? And so, because like the game gets way too hard, right? And so they expect you to just grind until your avatar becomes strong enough to handle some of this stuff, or until you just grind yourself into the ground, making yourself better. So neither of those two things I want to do, but at any point they're like, hey man, buddy, you can make it easier. You can use cheat codes. And I'm like, no, I want to beat the game on its own merit, which is what caused us to go through this incredible like discussion about like how games should be doing difficulty, right? And like the fact that like you have to account for the fact that people's egos will get tied up in what difficulty. So a lot of good things came from it, but yeah, man, I mean, like if you had asked me while I was playing it, you know, like within the first 10 hours, because it's maybe 30 hours in the game, you know, and not in substantial amount of time. Like the first 10 hours, I would have been like, I love this game. Second 10 hours, I would have been like, yeah, this game's kind of frustrating. Third 10 hours, I would have been like, this game's incredibly frustrating. But it wasn't until now that I look back on it and I was like, that was 30 hours that I netted a negative joy in my life, right? I got nothing out of it. I didn't make any money. I didn't improve any relationships. I got no benefit. And on top of that, I actually made myself more miserable net over that period of time. That's a loss, you know? So Rogue Legacy 2.
Boo.
Yeah.
All right. So that brings us to the worst. So, I'm going to just throw this caveat out there just because I know some people, I think, listen to Nostalgia Goggles because they're like, oh, I just like the way you guys deconstruct stuff, or you sort of give me the ha-has or whatever. We do have a few, especially some of our patrons who are in like the retro gaming community in parts of Europe where that's still like super big. We have a few people who like, that's all they're here for. It's like super classic stuff. So, just know that what I'm about to say is a reflection of my feelings and not an objective thing that should make you feel bad about your personal taste. My worst for this last year was Kid Chameleon. The game sucks and it's terrible and I hate it. Because I had, similar to kind of what you were saying, is like, I remember saying like, dude, we got to play Kid Chameleon because since we started the podcast, I have been wanting to circle back to Kid Chameleon because I had such weird memories of it as a kid. And then like 20 years later, I have these weird memories of learning about the intricate, like multiple exits branching system. Like you could beat this game in 10 levels or in 90 levels. Like it's just, the game can be massive in this way that feels very like mysterious and labyrinthian. And that's the way you have to execute that in code to make all of that fit on a Genesis cartridge or a Mega Drive cartridge is like not easy, right? And so like it's a technical accomplishment. It's a design accomplishment. It was trying to do something that at the time was very like coolest kid in the 80s. Like I get it, right? But it has the slipperiest, most weirdly awkward controls of any game. I think like any platformer that I can think of that we've played. I just could never feel like I could tell him to do what I wanted him to do. It's like he speaks a little bit of English and is native German, and I speak English and a tiny bit of German. So like I'm giving him like these half language commands, and he's confirming in the opposite languages mixed that he understands. And so like he's getting in the ballpark of what I want him to do. But if I need him to land on like the head of a pin, it needs to be that accurate, right? I need that level of precision. And so you're doing like these difficult platforming challenges, and there's crap flying all over the screen. There's enemies and there's death pits and stuff. And just, you only have to screw up a little bit when you only have 2 hit points to die, right? Yep. Super Mario Brothers with its same level design, but Kid Chameleon controls would be insufferable.
Yes.
So I get that it's learnable, but slippery platforming controls is just not what the industry settled on, right? Anytime someone is like, oh, I love Celeste, I love Super Meat Boy, I love pick your platformer, your indie darling platformer of choice. Somewhere in the review, someone will say it's got super tight controls, right? No one ever says like the controls are a mess and it made it so much fun. Like there is a genre of like quap likes where it's hard to handle on purpose. That's not what Kid Chameleon's trying to do.
But then the game is built around that.
Exactly, right?
Know?
Kid Chameleon is trying to be a platformer, and it just has slippery controls.
You know, I think that one of the other ways that they could salvage that, and I don't think they could have done it in that era with the technology, is like to make a point of it. So for example, right, instead of it being like you're Kid Chameleon and you're the only one that can stop the VR whatever, instead of it was like
ChatGPT,
yeah, you're the only one that can stop ChatGPT. If it was like a, you know, you're Kid Chameleon who's basically Mario, right? Like you're in this fantastical world and you're the only one that can stop the bad guy. And then you slowly find out that you're in a virtual reality simulation, and that's why everything's slippy and messy, is because like you are playing it, you know, very similar to you know, that one video game that I can never remember, but like the entire reason why everything's a little bit sloppy is because you're actually dealing with PTSD, you know.
Oh yeah.
You know, so, something like that. But there were a million different ways to do it. But what they did was they said, hey, I've got a Mario like. I want to do Mario, but I want to put like this cool, rad spin on it. And that was it, right? And so then they were like, okay, so all we need to do is like remake Mario, but make him super cool. And it's like, yeah, but Mario has super tight controls. Can you and your development team accomplish that? No, but that won't be important. It's like, it is part of the core gameplay.
Really critical, actually. Yeah. And so that's my hopes were so high and they were so thoroughly dashed. And also like, I still think it's a very cool premise to say, you know, you could be on the playground and I could be on the playground. We could be talking about Kid Chameleon, and maybe you've seen levels I've never seen. So now we're starting to have that like, no, wait, but level 27 only has 2 exits. And you're like, nah, man, there's a 3rd exit. And if you go to that 3rd exit, that's how you can get to these other levels that there's no other way to get into that part of the tree. Right. And like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like that could be so cool. But I would never be willing to get good enough at these controls to have that fun conversation and then have that fun experience.
So it's interesting that you brought it up because Kid Icarus was Kid Chameleon was like Icarus the myth, not Icarus the game, because Icarus the game was pretty decent, you know, pretty good. Icarus the myth, on the other hand, it flew too close to the sun and came crashing down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That wasn't strained at all. I got it. Nailed it. 10 out of 10. No notes for me.
Got it in 1.
For me, you know, I was like kind of scrolling through all the games that have deigned to touch my PlayStation over the last year, and you know, like I said, like there were a bunch of them that kind of were like the background noise of bad. We're like, and you know, you just kind of, especially when you've got like the Games Pass, you want to expand your horizons. If you're going to go out and eat a whole bunch of different foods, them are not going to be good. You got to try new things. This one though was one where I was pretty upset with it, which was The Evil Within.
The evil. Wait, hang on. Is that the game that within it there's that evil?
There is some evil within it. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
I
could see how someone would not understand from the title.
Yeah,
but
there's
I'm
not
glad
as
that
much.
I understood.
Not as much as there is in The Evil Within 2, which has twice as much evil within.
A double dip.
Yeah. No, this is one that actually we touched on briefly when somebody asked the mailbag question. What would be the game that we couldn't do an episode for? You know?
Oh yeah,
and And I had said like, because you had come up with one that because it was like the premise of the question was one that you would want to play that the other person wouldn't play at all, right? And we said like, okay, well, if it was you have to finish it. I've forgotten which one you picked, but it was like a JRPG that was like really opaque and arcane, and I was like, okay, I think I picked Darkest Dungeon because it's just there's so much that goes into finishing it. But then when I said like if we wanted to pick one that we would both hate, it would be The Evil Within. And here's why. Is so basically is that like the issue I had with it is it's very dark, scary, gloomy, and then right off the bat you meet like chainsaw murderer guy because you fall down a pit and you're lost and there's a bunch of body horror stuff, and body horror is not really my thing, So I can normally deal with like grotesque, over the top body horror stuff if it's like there's something for it, right? Or if it's like, oh, we're doing that to create this like horrible, uncanny atmosphere or whatever, right? Where we're showing how useless the life is, and we're doing that to subconsciously drive all that point home. I can deal with all that. But then the issue is that the mechanics of the game and what the game is trying to, because the difficulty, especially in a horror game, is to make the player feel like they are constantly on the verge of death, but not dying.
Yeah.
So death has to be on the table, right? You have to know that that's a possibility, but like you're because of your crazy skills, like the bad guys are just behind you, A good example of can give of this is the opening to The Last of Us when you're running away from the zombies with your daughter. It's like the zombies feel like they're right behind you, but they absolutely slow down a little bit if you slow down a little bit. Not to the point where if you stand still, they'll come get you. Because there is that tension. And then they've got this beautifully lighted path where it's just very clear where you're supposed to go. Game had none of that stuff, right? So I didn't know where I was supposed to go, what I was supposed to be doing, how I was supposed to be interacting with stuff. And so because of that, Weird Chainsaw Man murdered me like 7 times in 10 minutes, right? So now I just don't care anymore, right?
Right.
First time it was terrifying. The second time it was jump scary. The third time it was like unsettling. But by the 7th time, I'm like, okay, this is just another cutscene I have to watch, right? So because of that, there's an incredible amount of body horror. The mechanics are janky and not particularly fun. And on top of all of that, this big scary thing isn't scary, which makes me believe that, in my opinion, the game has no redeeming value. It is gross for the sake of gross.
Yeah. Yeah. A horror thing that I feel like at least now with the kinds of movies and games and stuff that I hear about, like horror stuff usually has some message, right? Loss is hard, right? War is bad.
You can be your own worst enemy.
Yeah, right. The human mind is the scariest place any of us can go. Like there's some sort of message. If the message is just gross things are gross, there is a huge community for that, right?
Yeah.
Just like gross things are gross, and they're super into that, and that's fine. But like super duper not my thing, right? Super duper not your thing, and so it's like, well, this has no message. It's not fun to do, so it's just interactive. Gross things are gross.
Yeah.
No, thanks.
No, not my bag. And like I said, like when it all comes down to it, a horror game that isn't scary, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
What do we do? What are we
even doing here? All right. So in the past, we have done our favorite nostalgia game of the year because of the way we're now like doing stuff.
Yeah.
Because of the production assistant changes.
Creating content.
Oh, God. Because of the way we art now. Which is stupid. Like when people say like I art, I know they're trying to say like, oh, lots of different things count as art, but like I hate the word content creator so much.
Really?
So much.
Okay. Because if you say like I art, it sounds like you're saying like I am.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Right. So it's like because of the way we review games now. Mm-hmm. There you go. Because that is literally what we're doing.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense to pick a favorite nostalgia game. So what we're going to do this time, and this this slot may be something different in the future. What we're going to do this time is talk about the favorite mailbag question we had from last year, because last year was our first full year of having mailbag questions, because for the first 5 years we weren't doing that. So the one that you kind of threw out is like, I was like, oh, we did this one, we did this one, we did this one. And you heard this one and you were like, it should be that one. I was like, it should be that one. That is not the one that garnered the best discussion, not the one that was necessarily like the most interesting or creative, but I think is like funny contextually, which was, if you were going to start another podcast, what would it be about?
And I believe that when that question was asked, we picked around a couple of ideas, but one of them, I was like, yeah, it'd be really interesting if like we did like a science-based podcast, like one where, like, because everybody will go up to you if you're a scientist and say like, hey, you're a scientist, right? So, can you answer this question about things that have nothing to do with your particular brand of science? I was like, because, I was like, it gave me a chance to kind of like do some fun research and we could have a good time with it. But, this is just pie in the sky kind of like, we'll probably never do it,
Yeah, like a month later.
Yeah, and then a month later, we're like, okay, so we're going to do this.
Yeah, we're going to do this. So good news, if you just got here and you're thinking to yourselves, this was a weird episode for me to pick as my first episode, and also I'm now interested in this other thing that they apparently do. Good news, it's just in this feed.
Yep.
It's just Nostalgia Goggles is now just whatever we make it. So Nostalgia Goggles is here, Nostalgia Goggles is here, Safety Goggles is here. It's just all one feed. You don't have to go look all over the damn internet for our stuff.
Technically, Nostalgia Goggles at the movies is still here.
Yeah. I mean, in a manner of speaking that I have never explicitly said, we are never doing this again.
Yeah.
But I think we both know.
Yeah, I mean, we did it like 3 times and it's been 5 years. So yeah.
We got the first 2 Mortal Kombats.
Yes.
We got Doom.
Yep.
So I feel like we did all the ones we needed to do. Because what were we going to say about Tomb Raider, the movie? Like
the only one that I would. Oh, so you know what? Now that we're just talking about this and brainstorming, the only one revival of that I would consider would be like this is the Patrick Stewart will do the movie under one condition kind of a thing, like right. Would be to do a comparison between the Super Mario Brothers movies.
You mean between the original live action Super Mario Brothers movie and the animated Super Mario Brothers movie?
Yes.
You want to do a comparison
of
those 2 films, those 2 pieces of cinema to see what they represent in our society and how they reflected their source material.
Yes, and how they juxtapose one another. Yeah.
Man. I'm
not saying we should.
I'm not saying that wouldn't even be fun. I'm just saying I would be so afraid that so many people have done that there would be whole comments we made that word for word someone else has already made.
So we'd be worried about the 1,000 monkeys with 1,000 typewriter situation, or infinite monkeys.
Yeah. Again, I think it would actually be fun, especially because I haven't seen the live action Super Mario Brothers movie since I was a kid. So,
right.
I mean, part of me is just kind of like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, like, hey, we normally hang out like in person twice a year. Maybe July comes around, it's too hot outside. Have some extra time. Just like we watched the original Super Mario Brothers movie, right? It's too hot outside. Can't go outside. It's Florida, right?
Yeah. Ooh, okay, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not saying never, but I'm also not saying yes.
Yeah. Look, there's a 60% chance that there's a 100% chance we'll do it.
That's right. Top 3?
Top 3. For me, my third best.
Wait, you mean your least best?
Least best.
Thank you.
Yes. Least best is Moving Out. The game.
Oh yeah.
Mostly because I enjoy it. Is very QWOPy, right? But as we said, like the game's built around that. That's the whole point. Like if the game handled like Super Mario, it wouldn't be a game. It would just be like monotony, But the fact that you're like no, and I think that the game does a great job with like so you grab the thing and then you're trying to run it out. And you got to coordinate with somebody else. But the fact that you can like break stuff like makes it all the more ridiculous and hilarious. The fact that like the optimal way to play is to break things sometimes. For example, I think in one of the first few stages, like there's a couch and you can run it out the back like you would, or you can just throw it through the window,
which was fun because I didn't play it as long as you did, but that was fun every time.
Right. Yeah. Like, or like when you would just take a chair and just throw it off the second balcony, like into the charky, like it's fine. It's in there, especially for you and for myself, who've done quite a bit of moving. I can say that there was some catharsis there. But also, it holds a special place in my heart because Teddy and I played that game a lot. And, so, and it was just always cute because Teddy would be like, it's like, we got to go for gold. I'm like, no, we just got to play the game, So,
no, buddy, we're not here to win. We're here to have a good time.
Yeah. So no, I really thought that it was it's fun for what it is. And again, like normally I don't like floppy stuff because I like to play video game. Like what's that one game called? Like Get Over It.
Getting Over It, I think.
Yeah.
Where you is that the one where you climb the mountain? You're in the barrel.
Yeah, you're in the barrel. And you have like a giant like pick.
Yeah.
Like that sort of stuff. I normally find entertaining for about 5 minutes and then incredibly frustrating. Right. This one was just it was very lovingly made. They have all the little cute little animal avatars. Like you get like the kind of narration about like the company being like kind of part of this dystopia in the sense that they're like, hey, just throw things out the window, whatever. There's more stuff to go do, like. And the one other thing that I really enjoyed about it is it at the end of each level, it shows you driving the moving truck, and there's like all the stuff in the back like bouncing around, but there's always a driver, and then you can have up to 4 players. So there's a passenger seat, and then the other 2 people are
running alongside,
just like huffing it,
Yes.
And the thing that I find I like that in and of itself is great. The thing that they did that I really enjoy is you don't have to have 3 players to have somebody running, like you can have 2 players and.
Oh, because if they're not in the truck or like in the truck area when the level ends, I think they're outside running.
I believe so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like, as at one point we were just like playing, and then, so then one of the other parts of the game, because I'd be playing with like either Megan, myself, and Teddy, or just me and Teddy or whatever, was who's driving the truck and who's running. And you always just made fun of the person running a little bit. So, just like, I don't know, very lovingly crafted game, and I enjoyed it.
Those little things, like, I think I've said this before, but it continues to be what's the healthy version of like a monkey on your back, like a driving force, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. Because I work in the like broader software industry, and I have for most of my career, and I want to produce things that have those kinds of touches, right? Where that impacts the gameplay in no way. You could easily just completely even miss that's happening, because maybe like the level ends, so you get up to go refill your water, and maybe you don't even see that screen, right? The like score loading screen, but just if you see it, you're like, oh, hey, that's funny. Like there's somebody outside the truck, right? And if that little animation wasn't there, like you wouldn't get to have that moment where, your 8-year-old like is ribbing you and he's like, Dad, you're outside the truck and I'm driving the truck. Right? Like you can create the circumstances that would maybe allow that little family moment to happen, but you can't really design specifically for that, right? Because then it comes across as like cloying, right? Like use this moment to have a fun time with your son. Like that would be disgusting, right? Yeah. So like it's a lot easier to just be like, let's just make a thing that's fun and like has little touches, and then those little touches will be meaningful in different ways to different people.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, number 3, moving out.
Yeah.
You least best.
Least best. So late in the year is a game I played called Slay the Princess, which I would actually strongly encourage you to try to find the time to play with Megan, and super not with your kids around, because it is a story-driven. It's almost like a choose your own adventure style. Mm-hmm. So you are given a bunch of context, and then you're given a bunch of things you can say, and that's it. That's all you can do. You can choose from a menu of things to say, right? It's Ace Attorney, is essentially. So the thing that's interesting about Slay the Princess is very early in the game, I would say the first couple of minutes, right? It's in the trailer. Like they flat out tell you, like, the point of this game is that you are the hero, and your goal is to go into this cabin where there is a princess chained to the wall and kill her to save the world. And if you don't, everyone dies. And that is the whole framing device. And then the narrator, you know what it is? It's a Stanley Parable, like, right? Where the narrator is giving you instructions and you can follow them, or you can choose to go against them, or you can follow some of them, but break some of the others. And what I found really endearing about it is it has some twists. So like, it's super obvious, but like, I will just spoil that for you. There are some twists, like, oh, this thing didn't go quite the way I was expecting, but in a way that is not that unexpected.
Right.
The delivery and the like fit and finish on it is through the roof. It's fully voice acted. So all of the things you do, all the things other people say is all fully voice acted, which the performances are great. So that makes it a lot more immersive. But what I found really interesting about it is the thing you do on, because there's like time loops, right? So the thing you do on your second loop is you, the player, can feel very influenced by what you just did. And that was the part that I actually found so delightful was, oh, because I did X, now I have X prime options. And sometimes I was like, ooh, that X prime option is like really interesting. Like I actually want to follow this, and like, is there like X like prime 1 and X prime 2, and like where I can continue to dive deeper and deeper on this chosen path of like following orders, not following orders, following them in a certain way, not following them in a certain way. But there were some times where it would present new options and I was like, no, I don't know. Now I'm going to go do something completely different because I don't like these new options you've presented to me. And so there's the whole point is like for games like this is that they kind of hold up a mirror, right? Mm-hmm. There's something like 25 different possible endings. And once you get past certain points in the game, certain endings kind of become locked off from you and you would have to start over because each loop builds you toward the inevitable ending, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of like you remember in I think they started it in Fallout 3 maybe, where it does the like slideshow style, like you killed all these zombies, but you saved this town and you did that. And each of those things is kind of its own little vignette, right? And it's so that they can stand alone. This kind of has a feeling like that at the end where all of the choices you made feel like they were the only choices you could make because those are the choices you made. But really, they all kind of can, interlock in any way. But I enjoy that experience of like, oh, I ended up with my ending. Right. Because these are the choices I made. These are the weird things that happened. This is the stuff that I guessed. This is the stuff that surprised me. This is the stuff that didn't surprise me, but was still executed in a way that was just like, oh, really? So if you want the entire game, if you really ran it to ground, you could probably play the whole thing in less than 6 hours. Oh, nice. So if you just said like, oh, okay, I'm going to get this game and then like Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, like I'm going to play it with someone and then we'll be done. Right. Like you wouldn't see all the endings, but you would get through a whole playthrough and feel like you saw everything. Yeah, really, really weird. A little bit of horror slant to it, but not so much that it's like
truly scary.
Yeah. You don't have to like go drink a warm cup of chamomile tea afterwards before you go to bed. It's not that scary.
Yeah, that actually, the your own unique ending thing reminds me of something, a funny story that happened with Baldur's Gate, because Baldur's Gate obviously built on similar premises, right? And I shared this with you earlier, but to share with the team is that you can romance many different people in that game, right? And my wife particularly loves the vampire Astarion, right? Astarion. Yes. And so at one point I had to unequip all of his items and I accidentally unequipped all of his clothes. And as I said, my wife was like, hey, is this? And she was like, come on. And I was like, okay, I forgot that I did that. And then in my own unique special ending, there's Astarion just standing there completely in the nude. And I was like, oh, see, now I feel a little bad because this is kind of undercutting some of the things that he's saying. He's like, oh, well, now that we've finally defeated the big bad, I'm not sure what I should do. It's like, oh God, put some clothes on, man. Like I just
well, job one for you is going to be pants.
Pants is going to be pretty critical. Excellent. Yes. So my middle best was Cyberpunk 2077.
Fair.
Yep. You know, played it because as I was kind of going through, I was like, oh, I like this game. I like this one, but spent a lot of time with it. The thing that I really loved, and so I haven't played the Freedom of Liberty or whatever.
Phantom Liberty.
Phantom Liberty. I haven't played the DLC. I do intend to, but haven't gotten to that yet. So I played it under the old system, old mechanics, old all of that stuff. I just, as we kind of discussed when we discussed on the show, I really love the fact that all of the, at least the initial backgrounds and stuff that you make super like matter, I also really like the different gameplay options in the sense that like, you can say, hey, I'm going to go all in on sniper rifles, and that gameplay is engaging. Me personally, I was big in on handguns and shotguns, like I just like.
So you played it like Doom.
Yeah, I like to see the whites in my enemy's eyes when I take them down, especially because there is something weirdly satisfying about, about walking in, the person's like, hey, you're not allowed to have guns in here. And then you just like press a shotgun against their chest and you're like, I would like you to reconsider.
But I do have a gun in here.
Yeah. And it's even more terrifying when the RPG mechanics kick in and you unload that shotgun and they get up and beat you to death. That is really terrifying when you're like, blam! And you like see them, the animation like shows them like hitting the floor and then you see them slowly starting to get up. I feel like George, did the exact reaction my character did, just like wide-eyed, and that was my best shotgun too. Oh, this is, and like you see like their health bar and it's like 1/10 depleted and you're like, I have to go. The stealth mechanics are really enjoyable. One of the other things that you could do is you had like RAM basically like chips, and so you could use that to like hack into security cameras or do any sorts of other hacking. But you can also like hack into people, which I think like at higher levels really does drive home the theming of like, hey, this is cool until you think about it, which is it. Like I got the one where it was just like basically RAM overload, where what you did was you downloaded a virus into somebody else's like cyber gear, and it just caused it to completely overload and kill them. And I got the other upgrade that when you did that, it immediately sent it to the person beside them as well.
Jesus.
So like people would be hanging out in like a cluster of 4. So I'd like download that while that virus was downloading, download another one that like blinded people, right? And so basically people would just be having a conversation, and then all of a sudden 2 of them would just drop dead. Another 2 would be panicked because they're blind, and the one person still remaining would see me emerge from the shadows and, take them out, right? And I'm like, their day went sideways so fast. And you think that it's awesome when you're the one doing it, but there's a billion people in the world, right?
Well, and sideways in a way that your final moments would be not just horrifying, but like horrifying in a way you don't understand.
Yeah, just
right?
confusing.
If a guy kicks the door into your drug club and starts killing people with a baseball bat, like, yeah, you're in this super violent industry and super violence is happening all the time. If you're just chatting and then 2 people essentially get unplugged from the matrix and their bodies just go lifeless, right? And then someone shows up and then you recognize a guy is here with a gun part, but you are now so off balance that you like, wait, are they dead because of the guy with the gun? And then by that point you've been shot.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the thing. So like the entire counter would take like under 3 seconds, know? And so, yeah, like from my point of view, it all made sense. But from their point of view, they're like, there's way too much information to take in all at once. So, but I say all that to say that type of gameplay was engaging. So there would be times where I'd be like, oh, I'm going to, I'm going to drive around in my car and, fire my car off of a ledge. So there's just so many different ways to play it that I found enjoyable. Also, too, there's a great Portal reference in it that I really enjoyed. At one point, you have to go hunt down cars whose AI have gone awry, and one of them just basically becomes GLaDOS. And, so just really, really fun, really enjoyable game. Probably spent about 60 hours on it, and gonna go find that DLC and probably throw another 60 at it. So enjoyable game.
Yeah, it's on my to play list now. I also benefited from a mutual friend of ours who shares their Steam library with me. Was like, oh, I'm going to play this game. And I was like, that means later I will play this game because now I don't even have to go get it. Like, it'll just be there. So this is my middle best, yeah?
Yep.
So my middle best for this year, Super Mario Brothers Wonder. I hated the new Super Mario Brothers games. I have talked about this a bunch of times. They're bad. They don't work for me. Super Mario Brothers Wonder fixes all of the complaints I had about like little paper cuts that ruin the experience for me. If you're playing with more than one person, you can't touch each other, right? The controls feel the way I expect them to. That doesn't mean they're right or wrong. They just feel like what I expect. And then that's like this perfect foundation. And then on top of that is this just celebration of 2D Mario games, right? Just, I feel like Super Mario Odyssey is like a celebration of 3D Mario, where they were like, what if everything? And then Super Mario Brothers Wonder is kind of the same thing,
nice.
Right? Where it's just like, what if for this part of the level, gravity is backwards, but only when you're underwater, right? So you have to swim down, but when you're on land, like the gravity is normal, right? What if in this part of the level, there isn't water, there's lava, but when you have the Wonder Flower, you are lava resistant. So you have to now overcome decades of lava kills you and jump into the lava. Otherwise you will fall to your death because you can swim through the lava, right? There's just literally every single level has a like nonsense wonder mechanic. They're not all like, oh man, I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life, right? And some of them are actually bad. Like when you're in the castle, like Bowser stages, the Wonder Flower are bad things because they're like his wonder things, right? Yeah. And so the level actually becomes more dangerous instead of like safer or more interesting. So they just, the fact that they were able to design all of these fun 2D Mario levels after generation of fun 2D Mario levels and then say, no, but every level is actually kind of 2 levels. It's just really incredible. Some of them have multiple exits because what if you skip the Wonder Flower and you go to the exit? What if you get the Wonder Flower and you go to the exit? So there's so much in there. I would say I've like 95% in it, like where I got most of the things you could do and I've done most of the things you could do, but it's just really nice for me, for like someone who considers Super Mario World like one of their all-time favorite games, to say like this feels like a direct sequel with 30 years of gaming literacy and game design improvements.
Nice.
Right. And but still approachable enough that if someone said, oh, well, our 2D platformer is really that fun, like I don't know that I would sit them down in front of Super Mario World now. I might sit them down in front of this instead, because there's a million things I would notice, you would notice, anyone like us would notice, because it's like, oh, this is like in that other Mario thing. This is a rehash of that, or it's an evolution of whatever. But you don't have to know any of that. In fact, the one thing I would say the game struggles with is if you are like pretty games literate, there's actually a couple times where it's like, stop explaining it to me. I get it. And I looked in the pause menu, you can actually turn off
nice.
that, because they realized like some people are not going to want this explained to them. And I was like, that they thought of everything.
No, that's really good. And actually, we have it on the list for my parents got the kids a video game for Christmas, and we were like, well, which one should they get them? And I was like, oh, we can do Super Mario Brothers Wonder. And then my aunt was like, oh, I also want to get a video game. So I was like, okay, well then that will be Super Mario Kart. And that way, all of that will work. But then we forgot the Switch when we came here, so it's going to be a belated Christmas present.
Yeah, surprise.
Yep. But yeah, no, I mean, like you'd given it now 2 good reviews, and I was like, yeah, man, let's give that a shot. For me, my best, it's Baldur's Gate, man. It's just
what?
I know. Yeah, it's just
bad news. Mine is also not going to be a surprise.
It's I mean, again, just because like sheer time I put into it, amount of joy I've gotten out of it. Played it all the way through with my wife. It's a blast and a half. So for all of those reasons, like I said, I played through Act 1 maybe 7 times now. Every single time I found something a little bit different. There's so much game there. All of the NPCs, everything that they do, it makes sense, right? So like, and just like in it has so much of the D&D feel, because there'll be times where I'm like, they let you do the nonsense stuff that you could do in D&D, and the punishments feel like what a DM would do to you, where it's just like, well, I'm going to go punch this person in the face for no reason. It's like, hey, man, go ahead and do that. You can do anything. Like, okay, now what happens? It's like, well, now this, and like, for example, at one point, like I went and punched somebody in the face that I shouldn't have. And things totally got to punch them in the face. And just like a good DM is, it didn't say like, well, now you die. Is what it was. It's like, no, that's cool. This other person's just disappointed in you. I was like, but I don't want them to be. Well, you know what? Damn it. I was ready. I wanted violence to be answered with violence, Instead, it was answered with like mild disapproval. Like, I don't like this. I don't.
I can't punch mild disapproval.
This isn't fun. So all of that. But I do think that the other thing that I will say that Baldur's Gate has really helped with is, one, I think it has made me a better DM, because it's allowed me to visualize some of the rules that I didn't really fully understand before. Or I understood them, but I'm like, this is just so weird and clunky. Opportunity attacks being the best example, where I'm like, okay, wait, so especially compared to the way it worked in 3.5, I was like, I don't get this. We're not going to do any opportunity attacks. But now that I played, I'm like, okay, I get it. Okay, I see now when they're saying this causes disadvantage, that's how that works. Okay, this is when concentration spell works, and like why this is important. And so I think it's made me a better DM. But also, the nice thing is that like, if somebody is like, hey, I've been thinking I want to play some D&D, I'm like, try playing Baldur's Gate. If you like playing Baldur's Gate, then you will probably like D&D. It's not necessarily for sure, but like at a minimum, when you come in to play D&D, you will be versed on some of the mechanics, right? On like some of like, oh, action, bonus action, I think that's kind of nice and helpful, because just recently I was playing D&D with some family members, right? So with my wife and like her family, and they were all new. My wife's played quite a bit, right? And at one point, so I made all of them like very basic fightery characters, right? So they could just kind of get used to it, get friendly with it. And so at one point, my Megan turned to me and she's like, okay, so I'm a starry form druid, so I want to use my bonus action to activate my starry form, which allows me for a bonus attack to fire off my starry form. But the first time I use the bonus action, I get to do both. And I was like, okay. She's like, and then for my actual action, I want to cast this spell to do this thing. And I was like, okay. So then she's like, now for the future, I can use my bonus action to make a ranged attack with a radiant damage. And I was like, okay. And she's like, and then I can do whatever with my normal action. I was like, okay, that makes sense. and then like looked up and like everybody's like, what did you just say?
Just saucer plate eyes all around the table.
Yeah, because like, Megan and I were both just communicating quickly with each other, and I was like, do not worry about any of that. She's doing a bunch of complicated stuff. The only person that has to understand it is me, and I do. But like, if you play Baldur's Gate a little bit, you'd be like, oh, okay, so I can use this, and then this is a good thing to do on round 1 versus round 2, and all that kind of stuff.
So it's I'm going to spin off that. It's interesting that you say that because this is something I never had to do with D&D. And I assume exists just because of the volume of D&D crap that there is in the universe. But I have actually still never seen, which is, how do you learn D&D by yourself? And the answer is, I'm not sure, right? Like, play a video game that uses the core rule set, I guess, or watch a Let's Play, like watch like Roll20 or Dimension 20 and whatever the popular one is that I can't believe I'm blanking on. Thank you. Right. Watch them. And that gives you a rough idea of what like actual play at the table is like. And I think most of the players' handbooks have like a, here is what play at the table is kind of like, and it's, you know, like half a page, and that's okay, but it doesn't really make you understand like, well, when would I roll dice? Why, when would I not roll dice? Like all that kind of stuff. So something I've now seen from other games that I again, I'm sure exists for D&D, but I've still never seen it, is solo adventure. So 2 or 3 tabletop role-playing games that I have been curious about over the last couple of years, they have a solo adventure where it's just, here is the character you're playing, here's like the pre-gen, here's the story, and then it's kind of like a choose your own adventure book where you say, okay, I am now in this situation. You can do this, you can do this, or you can do this. This doesn't represent everything you could possibly do, but this gives you enough of an idea of like, you could instantly go to combat, you could try to talk them down, or you could try to sneak around, right? Like those are 3 common things that make sense for this character in this situation with the objective they're trying to accomplish. And that means you can go through it at whatever pace you want, right? If you screw something up, it doesn't matter because it's not a computer game, so there's no engine like doing the work for you. And again, I assume someone somewhere has made something like that for D&D, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, because that's the thing is that, it's kind of difficult because once you've, like, I mean, we've been playing D&D for 25 years, right? So it's like...
And there's no way that existed when we were kids.
No. I mean, like, because I remember the way I actually learned how to play D&D while we're tangenting is actually D&D was not the first TTRPG I started with. It was Tales, what was it called? Tanzandia or something like that. It was weird because like my dad had some coworkers and we were all pretty close, right? So like I went over to their house and they're like, we're going to play this role-playing game, right? And I was like, I don't know what this is. I was like, oh my God, this is cocaine. So we played that. And then we played that for maybe like 6 months or something. And then he was like, hey, the new edition of Dungeons and Dragons is coming out. I want to try playing that because that's when 3.0 came out, right? And I was like, okay, but like it can't possibly be as good as this game, right? He's like, it's fine, like it'll be okay. And but that was the thing, is that I feel like that most people's D&D stories start with a DM Sherpa kind of guiding them through it. And I think that that's, to your point, right, some of the dangers of it, because I'm sure that there are some people who are like, oh, I don't like D&D, it's not my thing. It's like, you may not have even had a bad DM, you may have just have had your DM.
Yeah. Well, and because it's 6 people at the table, one could be a bad apple.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I don't like D&D. And it's like, no, you didn't like playing with Jim because Jim is a prick.
Right. I still remember one time when I was talking to, some friends, and, I was like, oh yeah, some DMing, and they were like, oh, we need a new DM, and I was like, oh, okay, let's talk about that a little bit. So I was like, what are you into? And they're like, here's the thing. First thing off the top, we don't want to start as level 1. I was like, okay, why? And they're like, being level 1 is boring. There's nothing you can do mechanically. We want to start off like do a level 10 to level 20. It's like, okay. And they're like, the thing number 2, don't like it when people like fudge the rules, like we want to like really love building a character that's like really like understanding the mechanics of each little thing and how it works, and all this stuff. And that's kind of what I like the most about the game. I'm like, I am not your DM.
We will both hate this.
Yes, this is a bad idea. And I was like, I prefer for all my stuff, there's like, I care about the narrative more than anything else, more than any of the rules, more than anything. I will break all of the rules if it makes for a good story that we all appreciate. And then just like in a first date that's going sideways, the person was like, no, I mean, like, that's fine too. Like no, we can do that too, baby. Like, come on, like, why don't be like that. Like, I'm fine. I was like, no, sorry.
I get it. You haven't been in a relationship in a while.
Yeah,
but we will both be worse off for this.
Yeah, like this is just a bad idea. It's like, oh no, but maybe just one adventure. We'll just see how it goes, So I say all of that to say that, yeah, there's just so much variation there. But to your point, right, is that like if you all of a sudden, and I think that most of the time, because D&D is by its nature a multiplayer game, right? So it'd be kind of like saying, how do you learn how to play Overwatch by yourself? And it's like, I guess with bots, but like that's not going to prepare you for anything, right?
Right.
So I think that, you end up with just a whole bunch of people just kind of workshopping it together, right? Where you're like, okay, now this happens. And somebody's like, yeah, so I read that and I don't know, like, so you can do it with 4 novices and just one of them is the DM, but yeah, that's also kind of suboptimal. I think that the amount of pre-generated campaigns helps with that sort of stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Because it definitely helps like the first time DM for them to be like, okay, DM, these are the likely things that will happen. This is the pre-generated stuff. Go from there.
The 2 that I can think of that I did were like solo, choose your own adventure. They were specifically to stand in for character creation. Like you do this little thing on your own, and at the end you have a character ready to play that you understand because you just willed them into existence, right? You didn't pick from a list. They now exist because of the choices you just made, right?
Interesting.
So they're the kind of person who does X because that's what you did when presented with the conflict. So like like I said, I guarantee this exists for D. I'm going to look it up because I'm curious now.
Now that actually, sorry, I misunderstood that it was that I like a lot.
So I have seen solo adventures where it is just a 1-player adventure just to familiarize yourself with the rules. But the ones that I enjoyed the most were where it was a method of character creation.
No, I like that a lot because I like the idea of me saying to the players like, hey, create, like whatever, go through this thing and use it. Because so often, man, when you're playing as D&D, people come up to you and be like, all right, so I got a character. It's like, what do you got? And you're like, I'm a level 3 fighter. And it's like, And
why?
Yeah. Like, why are you? And they're like, oh, well, I'm fighting because, like, for example, one example I got is like, it's like somebody was like, hey, I'm a vengeance paladin. I was like, okay, cool. And I'm like, why are you a vengeance paladin? They're like, well, my parents died when I was younger and now I'm out for vengeance for killing them. I'm like, okay, Batman, got it. And I was like, yeah, so tell me more about this character. And they're like, well, that's it. I'm like, that's like a thing, man. Do you have any friends, acquaintances? What organizations have you been involved with? Like, you're a paladin. Like, how did you learn how to become a paladin? Like, did God speak to you directly? Flesh this character out a little bit, They're like, oh yeah, I'll think on it. And then they never did.
No.
And then you end up getting into the adventure and the person's like, well, it seems like you're spending all the time on these 2 people's backstories, but I never get anything on my backstory. It's like,
you don't have one. I can't spend time there. That island does not exist.
Yes, there is one thing about your backstory that we can talk about, which is you I mean, like, to be fair, he is the same amount of drip as it is to hang out with Batman. It's just like, my parents were murdered.
Yeah,
it's just
okay,
like,
we get it.
Yeah, all right, Bruce. It's fine. Sounds good. So, anyways, I think we have to go back to Themyscira because did I tell you my parents? It's like, okay, just all right.
We just got a whole tiny mini Nostalgia Goggles episode shoved into the middle of our year.
Yeah, right.
But what a drum roll leading up to my best.
Exactly.
Yes. I do actually want to revisit this topic later. So my best was, again, not a surprise to anyone, Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah.
Right? It consumed my entire life. It is continuing to consume my entire life because the next expansion's coming out soon.
Yeah. It was weird because when I came over, and I know you've been playing a lot of it, when I came over, your kids didn't seem to recognize you?
No.
Yeah.
No, but you know what? That's fine.
Yeah.
Because my island sanctuary is very well adorned.
Exactly. And I mean, like, hey, tough people make tough choices,
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And I chose correctly.
Yes.
No, it continues to surprise me that I found the mechanics engaging because I was sure I'd be put off by them. And I find a thin layer of the social stuff engaging, even though I was sure I'd be put off by it. And the fact that I was able to put the amount of time in, even though I was like, I can't play a 1,000-hour game. That's ridiculous. Sure can. Right.
Turns out
you just have to ruin the rest of your life. And now, because like through Endwalker, so the last expansion, like that was the 10-year story, right? That's done now. And now the expansions going forward are going to be new story, new big bad, new things, right? Some of the core characters are going to continue to change, even though, they've been around for a decade. Like, changes are coming. And this would be the spot where you would say, all right, I'm done, right? I read 10 of the Discworld novels. I got this character's whole story. I don't need to read the other 40 Discworld novels, right? This would be a time to get out.
But you're gonna.
But I'm gonna. And I'm excited.
Yeah.
And that's part of what has continued to hold my imagination is I am very clear that I'm not doing it because I'm a completionist. I'm not doing it just so I can say I did. I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody. Lord knows it's not the cheaper route because it's a subscription game, right? So, you got to pay for it every month. But like, I'm continuing to enjoy faffing around in the world while waiting for the next great adventure. And I was like, I hope I'm not paying for this game forever because then it will be incredible. It'll be the most costly. It's already the most costly video game I've ever played. Right.
Yeah.
So and that's only after a year. So it just is only going up from there. But I'm still in it, like, which is kind of cool. I suspect if they release like Baldur's Gate 3 DLC that you will probably be like a day one orderer. Yeah. So
and sorry, just to circle back to your point about the cost though, is it like about how many hours a month do you think you play this game?
It's gone down a little bit once I finished Endwalker. But just about 100 because I've been playing it for about 12 months and I have about 1,100 hours into it.
Sure. All right. So 100 hours a month. How much is the subscription?
The tier of subscription I pay for is $13.
Okay. So basically what is that? 13 cents an hour?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not bad.
It's not bad.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's also and thinking about it through like purely economic terms, like I specifically canceled some of the streaming services we had and didn't pursue other streaming services because I wasn't using them.
Right.
My wife wasn't using them. My kids are not old enough to just like go watch TV on their own. So I was like, well, it's not the money. It's what am I getting for the money?
Right.
If I was watching 10 hours of Netflix a week, then Netflix would probably be a solid deal.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm watching 0 hours of Netflix a week. So it's a terrible deal.
Right.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing is that like, and that's the reason why I mention it is because a lot of times people will like complain about the cost of video games. Right. And I'm like, from my seat in general, video games is like one of the cheapest forms of entertainment. Right. In the sense that like once you discount the system, right? Like, which even accounting for the system, it is still very cheap, but right. So like take Baldur's Gate, right? Now I have lost my life to Baldur's Gate, right? But I think last time I checked, I had about 200 hours put into it, right? And the game cost, I think $89 or $79. I can't remember.
Did you get like a special edition?
Mm-mm.
Probably 69 then.
Might have been 69,
yeah,
but more than 60. I remember because most of the time games have been $60.
Yeah,
forever.
$59.99 for ages.
Yeah, so like it was more than that, and I think it was like $79 or $80. Because big game,
big one, yeah.
Right. So, but let's say $90 just on the outside to make it easy, right? So then that means that I that's what 45 cents an hour, right?
Pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good, right? So even if you assume that I bought the entire system just to play that game, right? That would still bring me down to about $3 an hour, something like that.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Right. And that's if I bought a PS5 for the exclusive purpose to play this one game and then never played it again, never touched any of it again. It would be $3 an hour. A movie costs like $20 to go to, right? And that's 3 hours on the outside, right? So like going to the movies.
And often you wish it was less time.
Right. So like that's way more expensive, right? And that's not even like super IMAX stuff, right? That can easily get up to $10 an hour, right? But I say all of that to say that a lot of times people are like, oh man, I spent $20 and it was only a 10-hour experience. It's like, okay, still pretty good, So I say all that to say that, yeah, like a subscription fee for $13 an hour or $13 a month where you're getting that much entertainment out of it. That's a pretty good deal.
It is. They make MMOs that are $13 an hour, but they're a whole different kind of content.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again